All right, so let's get started. Just going to start off with some quick announcements. If you have an announcement from the community, we'd like to hear about it. Any meetups that you'd like to talk about, jobs, hackathons, blockchain news, or anything else, I'd like to get some ideas from the crowd. So if you have anything and you want to yell it out, please do.
We got DisCon coming up next week.
DisCon, that's what day is it?
The 3rd and 4th of August.
And where is it?
Boulder.
And how, DisCon.io, I believe it is, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah. I looked at the speaker list recently. It just keeps getting better and better. So I think if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. Anybody else? Announcements? All right. I have an announcement. I just want to give the mission statement for Colorado Blockchain, or for Decentralized Colorado. It's basically the idea is to amplify the voice of Colorado, let people know what's happening here, and get people out to work with us. If you want to help, there's a URL for a donation, basically to help with meetup costs and just to make things better. You might have noticed there's a tip jar out there in the front. There's one out there by the goodies. Please use it. And if you don't want to donate, you could also volunteer or spread the word. So please help. Lastly, I want to say if you're out there and you have a burning blockchain-related idea or project that you want to share, please let us know. We would love to hear about it. So we're open to all ideas from everywhere in the space. Please come out and tell us what you're excited about. Question?
Well, I have one announcement.
Yeah.
My name's Dan Magnet, the ambassador here for Denver, Colorado for Hashtag. Next month, I'm just going to be doing like a short presentation on it. And then the next month in September, I'm going to be doing a full-on demonstration of it. I'll be posting that, but if you want to hear about how that's all evolving and come and challenge all the assumptions, I'd love to have anybody come. Thanks.
Excellent. That's Dan Maggie from Hashgraph. And that's all I had. I'm going to introduce our Emcee for tonight. This is, if you don't know him, you probably have met him before. This is Dan Shields. And his bio is, why don't you just introduce yourself, Dan?
Oh, come on.
I'm sorry. There's a lot of stuff going on. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Will. So, I'm Dan Shields, and apparently need no introduction, so thanks. But really what I see myself as is just a connector in the community. I am passionate by the people who are here and the technologies that we're developing here in Colorado. So, I basically am that. If you want to get connected to either people, to companies, to businesses, if you want to be educated, come find me. I love chatting. So, with that being said, I figured I can hand it off to the real people this evening who are doing some fun stuff. I think our first presenter is Dimitri. Let me get his info here. So, Dimitri is the founder of Sourceability, a company with Sourceably. Goodness. It's a company with the goal of creating transparency in manufacturing, production, and supply chains. He has a background in impact-focused business and mindfulness, and believes in technology and business as avenues to participate in positive social change. And the tagline here is creating awareness and encouraging impactful buying choices. So with that, let's welcome Dimitri.
Hi again. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about one of the potential ways that I see this technology, blockchain, being a benefit to one of the most impactful ways, or one of the biggest ways that we have impact, and that is how we buy. But I'm going to take a step back. So this idea came from the realization that when we go out and purchase something, very rarely, in fact, most of the time, it's shrouded in unknowns. We have no idea where something came from, how it was made, what ingredients went into it, how the different stakeholders were treated in this product, whether that be animals or people. And these unknowns are a problem for a variety of reasons. For one, they're a problem for consumers because we don't end up knowing the true costs of something when we buy it. And additionally, if you are a social buyer, let's say, it becomes more difficult to vote with your pocketbook if you are not aware of what practices you might inadvertently be supporting. So it's also a problem for businesses because businesses end up spending a lot of time and a lot of money to try and make some of these unknowns known. Oftentimes, this is for regulatory compliance needs, such as food safety needs or different government standards around manufacturing. But more and more, there are businesses who have a desire to make some of these unknowns known as a way to validate marketing claims to their consumers, as a way to spotlight their best practices. And unfortunately, they spend a lot of time and a lot of money trying to do this, often ineffectively. So this is where Sourceably comes in. Sourceably is a business with the goal of creating transparency in manufacturing, production, and supply chains. You have to excuse my terrible artistic skills also. We do this by creating an ecosystem of transparency that really allows for businesses to make transparent their internal production processes and cycles as a way to, one, create more efficient and streamlined forms of compliance and reporting, and also as a way to validate marketing claims to their consumers. Blockchain is a really excellent technology for this. On a higher level, the whole idea of a decentralized ledger really lends to transparency and creating trust. And on a more technical level, technologies like smart contracts allow us to create more effective and efficient and streamlined methods of creating transparency and automation for businesses. At this point, we are a very small team. I'm the CEO and founder, supported by an excellent advisory board ranging from blockchain experts such as Corey Ditch, who some of you might know, great blockchain fella, and individuals on the board of directors of the UN. I think we're all unified by our belief in business as a method of social change and really see Sourceably as a way to create positive social change in some of the biggest and most influential ways that people participate in the economy. At this point, we are looking to build a development team of impact-focused, tech-savvy individuals. So if you or anybody you know seems to fit this bill, definitely please come talk to me. And we're also continuing to develop relationships with impact-focused investors. Here is our website, if you are interested in getting in touch. A little hard to write at this strange angle. Probably can't read that because my handwriting's bad, but it's just sourceably.co. And that's all I got. Thank you. I'll stay up here for questions too, because if any of you have any.
Is it .co or .com?
.co.
Just CO.
Just CO.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So what information are you guys actually putting on the blockchain then? Is it you're putting the internal supply or the internal chain of what's happening on the chain, and people are able to validate that way, or and then what Oracle are using to say yes, we're putting this on the blockchain, but this is actually true.
Sure. So the question was, what information are we putting on the blockchain, and what oracles are we using to do that? Is that accurate? So the information that we are putting on chain is really dependent on what the producer of the data would like to be available, because I think a lot of the recent scandals around extractive data methodologies are really beginning to show how that's not the way we should be doing things. So to that effect, we really allow the producers of the data to put the information that they would like to be available. We use oracles such as internal ERP systems, IoT data, third-party verifications and audits, and that kind of thing to kind of create additional layers of trust and verification. But ideally, a company will be sharing their entire supply chain and production cycles on the blockchain as a way to create more efficient reporting and as a way to validate their marketing claims to consumers, because without a full picture, there's going to be holes, right? And people will probably question that. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Dimitri. And as we're switching over, we'll have Connor Herman come up here, and I can introduce him to everybody. Thank you. So Connor Herman here is the head of reporting at Radar Relay, and is previously the director of token analysis, and has been with the company since September as the #1 employee. So his tagline here is transforming an exchange. Let's get you set up. There you go, left and right.
Cool, thanks for the intro, Dan.
My
This
pleasure.
is a bit more of an abbreviated version of a presentation I gave at one of Dan's last events at Worldwide Technology, so if you
Super good.
might look familiar to you. What was that? KuCoin? KuCoin? What was that? Coinbase? Yeah, Gemini. Yeah, so everything mentioned here was a centralized exchange. So with a centralized exchange, you're actually giving up custody of your funds to the exchange, and they're susceptible to hacks. You might have seen ones more recently like CoinCheck or BitGrail, or you might be familiar with some pretty big ones like Mt. Gox or Cryptsy. So the solution to that was the decentralized exchange, which leverages Ethereum's own native smart contracts in order to facilitate trading. So for a decentralized exchange, you have to deposit tokens into that decentralized exchange's proprietary smart contract, trade, and then withdraw them out when you want to send them somewhere else. So all the while you're doing this, you're incurring gas costs. Still not the perfect solution. But with this new class of decentralized exchange built on the 0x protocol called relayers, you actually maintain custody of your funds throughout the entire process. So you're able to indicate your willingness to trade, all without your tokens leaving your wallet. So this is what Radar Relay actually looks like, and you might notice that it's pretty familiar to you. It looks just like a centralized exchange would, but on the back end, it's actually completely different since the 0x protocol is facilitating these trades. So you have the order book right there, and you can place a market or limit order. And all these trades are happening wallet to wallet, peer to peer. So these are some things that you might consider when you're choosing an exchange. I won't get too in depth here. But you might recognize brand equity as a pretty big one, where you have Binance and Coinbase, or GDAX/Coinbase Pro. That's pretty much the front runner when it comes to brand equity. So this is something we're definitely trying to build at Radar. Another thing would be the user experience. So if you've ever used EtherDelta, you probably know what I'm talking about when I say it's not a great user experience. So a user should be fairly... They shouldn't be able to really tell the difference if they're using a centralized or decentralized exchange in terms of user experience and user interface, and that's really where we want to get to. There are a few nuances with relayers, like wrapping your ETH so it's an ERC20 compliant token, so you can trade within the Ethereum ecosystem. These are some things that will eventually be able to be abstracted away, so the end user won't have to deal with them. One thing that's really cool about the 0x protocol is a networked liquidity piece. So before, all centralized exchanges have their own siloed liquidity pools. So people on Coinbase are trading with other people on Coinbase, Gemini with Gemini, and so on and so forth. But with relayers, they can actually share liquidity. So Relayer XYZ would be able to pull in all of the orders on our book and display them on theirs. So because of this, you're able to have better price discovery. So I've been talking about the 0x protocol a lot, but what actually is it? So actually, it's just a set of standardized smart contracts that are open and interoperable that are built on top of the Ethereum stack. So if you imagine what this actually is, you have Ethereum here as the base/settlement layer, the 0x protocol smart contracts above it, and then when you come to the relayer, you're signing your willingness to trade an order under specific parameters, and we're actually hosting that signed bit of data and displaying it in an order book format that's familiar to you. So what do we think the future of decentralized exchange is going to look like? I mentioned that we really want to get to parity with the UI UX of centralized exchanges that already exist. But a few other things are coming in the very near future with 0x protocol version 2. So one thing would be atomic order matching. So right now, because we don't play any part in the exchange directly, you can actually cross the spread when you trade. So you could place a buy order above the best ask, which is not what you want to happen. You want that to be matched atomically without the relayer actually having to take both sides of the trade. So this is something that will be you'll be able to do in 0x v2. Trezor support is another incredibly highly requested feature because they deal with signing data a bit differently. You would have been able to use a Trezor to be a taker of an order since you're actually sending a transaction to the blockchain, but you're only able to currently make orders with a ledger or MetaMask right now. But in version 2, you'll be able to actually sign the data that will indicate your willingness to trade. Advanced order types. So when I talk about this, I talk about something that might be familiar to you, like a stop loss limit order. 0xv2 will have ways to set this up because smart contracts will actually be able to create orders on your behalf, which is really exciting if you think of all the possibilities that you could make with that. Another one that we're really excited about is support for additional Ethereum standards. So right now, as I mentioned, we can only support ERC20 tokens, but if you've heard of ERC721 or non-fungible tokens, think CryptoKitties or baseball cards on the blockchain, you could create a relayer that deals exclusively in the cards for a trading card game, or you could trade a CryptoKitty to whatever token you want. So definitely a very exciting thing. I already mentioned network liquidity, so I'll skip that. But cross-chain atomic swaps, one of the big advantages that centralized exchange currently have on decentralized exchanges is the inability to trade across blockchains. So this is a really big piece that a lot of smart people are working on, but it still seems to be a long way off. So these are a few of the things that I talked about. Does anyone have any questions? That was a lot to throw at you in 7 minutes. Yes?
So say, for example, I have Litecoin and I want to buy ETH. From point A to point B, what would be the transaction time from wallet to wallet using Radar Relay?
So if you wanted to buy ETH on Radar Relay, you would not be able to do it because that would be across blockchains. So yeah, there really wouldn't be any way to do that. What I imagine happening is eventually we'll see a custodian who takes, 250,000 Litecoin or 10,000 Bitcoin and holds them and then issues an ERC20 token that represents like one Litecoin or one Bitcoin. And then you can trade between that and then go back to the custodian when you want to cash out, and they might charge you 10, 20, 30 basis points for the ability to do that. But we haven't really seen anything like that yet, so maybe it's just something that I see happening in my mind and nobody else does. Yeah, Cameron.
How are you guys different than the Paradex and Ether Delta you explained, but Paradex and some of the other ones?
Yeah. So Paradex. Oh, okay. How are we different?
In the decentralized exchange world, how are you guys different?
Right. So in the decentralized exchange space, how are we differentiating ourselves from, say, Paradex or Ether Delta? And we talked a bit about Ether Delta earlier in the presentation, but specifically I'd like to touch on Paradex. So Paradex, for those of you who haven't heard, got bought by Coinbase, I believe, within the last 2 months, which is pretty exciting because it shows Coinbase is very interested in the decentralized exchange space. One thing that I would say is a differentiator between us and Paradex would be token selection, UI, UX. I'm not sure if they have fees, so I won't go into that, but I did mention the atomic order matching. So the way that Paradex actually did this was you can sign in a specific taker address. So only this Ethereum address is allowed to be the taker of an order. So Paradex assigned that to themselves. So any relay or any order originated on Paradex would be one that only Paradex could take. And in this way, they were able to create this quasi-matching engine, which we chose to use the open order book model because we were able to keep fees down. Because of that, Paradex also had like a large order minimum, something like $50 or $100. Our order minimum right now is $1. So keeping fees for the end user was our goal there.
Can you talk a little bit more about what relaying is for those of us who are still learning?
So what is relaying? So I would actually just say to that is just think of this new class of decentralized exchange as a relayer. And what we're doing is hosting an off-chain order book. So we allow you to show up, indicate your willingness to trade, and then you're signing that with your private key. And then we're hosting it in a familiar order book format. And then other users can show up and take your order. And then the orders are settled on-chain. So with some legacy decentralized exchanges, the order book might have also been hosted on-chain, which creates a pretty terrible user experience because it can only be updated like with the block times. So you'd be waiting like 15 or 30 seconds to even know what the actual order book looks like, which is not great. So, good question.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Really, really great. So I guess the next thing we're going to want to do is bring up Eric Johnson, and he's the co-creator of Cash. This is the cyberpunk cryptocurrency trading game, and he's the winner of ETH Denver. So we're really excited to have him here today. And so I guess you might be able to give a little bit of a tagline while I'm getting your presentation up. Maybe tell them a little bit about something, rumors of a free something handout, rhymed with something.
All right, so yes, so if you guys want to follow along tonight, go to cashthegame.com, and cash is in like, storing something, not cash is in like, oh, I'm gonna get a lot of money or whatever. So you can go to cashthegame.com, click on paper, and download our magenta paper, which we call it magenta paper because it's not a white paper, and we're not very academic. We don't pretend to be academic either. Is this just scrolling through?
I think you just hit the pause button.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Sorry about that.
Don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
Cashthegame.com, so that's, probably can't even read that. C-A-C-H-E, thegame.com. And additionally, later, I'll give you another URL for a free gift for being here. Tokens, right? Raise your hand if you like tokens, and like just like owning them and being like, I own this.
All right, so so Cash is basically a cyberpunk cryptocurrency trading game. So let me see if this works. Perfect. So Cash, more formally, is web-based, Ethereum blockchain-powered cryptocurrency trading game based on the dynamics of a classic computer game called Drug Wars. Is anyone familiar with that game? So that's like, came out in 1984 for like, I think it was released on like, PC, DOS, MS-DOS, whatever. And it was like I remember it when it was ported to TI calculators because it was a basic game. You know, you didn't even need assembly; you just needed basic to do it. So it's based on these dynamics, and basically what that means is it's a turn-based strategy game. You know, in Drug Wars, you're basically a drug dealer engaged in arbitrage, and the object is to pay off a loan shark. Cash is basically, dynamics are basically the same. Instead of trading drugs, as in Drug Wars, you trade fictional cryptocurrencies across exchanges, which are locations in an 8-bit dystopian cyberpunk universe. So Cash is also an ERC-20 token. It's operated by the token, so like in the arcade coin op sense. So every play is right now a single Cash token, although that could change at some point. But also, players' identities are stored on the blockchain as well as global high scores. Those are 721 tokens for those who know a thing or two. So you basically own your identity, and if you get a high score, you own your high score. Also, to prevent cheating, we do have an off-game game server. So not everything's on chain. It would be kind of unrealistic. This is a photo of the UI here. Cash universe. So backstory is basically set in an 8-bit cyberpunk dystopian universe. Location known as Mega City. Also, it might as well be like San Francisco like now, but it's getting there. It's pretty close, let's say. No offense, but we are in Denver, right? So we can just say that. So yeah, it's 2084, and fiat currencies are replaced by cryptocurrencies. These are largely owned by cartels, tech company cartels, that is. And there is one dominant currency called Hashcoin, created by mysterious Kakai Hashimoto. Just made that up out of thin air. There's nothing that relates to it. So anyways, so you're basically a dweller nobody cares about besides loan sharks. And in this game, loan sharks are called plasma debt, which is from a plasma net conglomerate, which is a exchange in the game. So basically, you start off with 50 cash in the game, and you basically have to travel around to different exchanges and, you know, basically arbitrage that and get as many, as many fiat coin as you can at the end. That's your score. A round is 15 days in the game. So yeah, that just goes over that a little bit. So yeah, there's fiat coin is your score, also known as kind of like US dollars, but in the future, that's what's going to happen, right? So yep, you have the loan shark. Rounds are days. Again, just like in Drug Wars, you have to travel to an exchange. You basically take a turn, right, or a day. There's some dangers. There's something called the leak, which is sort of like a random danger of violence in Drug Wars, except it's sort of like a piece of malware. So that's that as part of that. And now the fun part, the original tokens in the game, we have, let me do the math here. 4 times 3 is 12. We have 12 tokens. These are fictional. Someday we might make them into ERC-20s, each one of them themselves, which might be pretty cool. And but yeah, these are the things you trade in the game. And then the game funnel is kind of interesting. So you can create a unique avatar. You basically burn 100 cash tokens, this ERC-20 token, and then you'll get a 721 token, avatar token, which you can define a name, a profile image, or a avatar image, and a description. You don't have any special attributes, but you can get those and accumulate those in the game. That will affect the game somehow. 1 cash token to play 1 game, which is 15 days, and then depending on how well you perform in the game, you can receive hash coin, which can be used to buy and sell avatars, buy t-shirts. The co-creator of this is like, he's really into like creating t-shirts, so we're gonna have t-shirts and stuff that we'll send you. It's exciting, right? Unique other 721s that can help you affect the game. Chat hacks, because we actually have chat. Each exchange is a chat room, and you can also buy exchanges. So if you're like really just a, how do I say it, like a boss, I guess, so to speak, like you can actually purchase a whole exchange, which will come with its own set of ownership attributes. So let's see, what else? Yeah, as I said, each exchange is a private chat room. We have some game warfare type stuff, so you can, inside of the game, mug, hack, ban, spam, fish, chat, and trade with other avatars in the game. And let's see. So Cache actually is web-based, so eventually it'll be available publicly at cachethegame.com. On desktop browsers, you can use MetaMask. Also on mobile, looks pretty good on mobile now. Recommend Trust, which is an Ethereum wallet. And dedicated hardware, again, that's not my idea, but it would be pretty cool to have Cache on a sort of like a hardware thing that basically also ran dApps and was a hardware wallet. So, like I said, come a long way. We have a kind of a minimal viable game that's going to be out probably around next week. We'll start like releasing beta. Has pretty much all these elements. So right now, I've set up a giveaway. So if you go to giveaway.cachethegame.com, you can put in your email address and a public Ethereum address, and you'll get 50 Cache tokens. So, and then we'll have your email, which we'll use to control you. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, just use a burner. I don't care. Just we want to stay in touch with you, so that yeah, questions. Giveaway, as in like giving, giveaway. Yeah. .cachethegame.com. No problem.
Have it out after too.
Yeah, I mean, this works, so, but yeah, I was going to have like my laptop, but any other questions? Any questions at all? Just busy getting your free tokens, huh?
How'd you guys come up with, or who does the art, I guess?
The artwork is this guy named Roscoe Lamontagne, and Roscoe is a multimedia artist. He does like sculptures and stuff too, but I worked with him in a startup in Boston years ago, and he just does all the artwork original, and he just has a very creative imagination. So yeah, it's all custom artwork that he makes. Anyone else?
Are you up and running, or are you still?
So, are we up and running? And so next week we will start opening up the beta. So the cool thing about the giveaway is we'll get your email address, and then we're going to start to, basically message people in waves to come on and start playing.
So you can, when you go into the beta phase, you can go in and try it out?
Yep, you'll be able to play the full game. You'll be able to be in the chat room. You can mint avatars. You can get high scores. You'll basically be able to do most of what nothing close to what we envision, which is like probably insane, but like there's everything I mentioned, you kind of will be able to do it.
And in order to do that, you go to the giveaway one?
Yeah, start by going to the giveaway, put in your email address, put in your Ethereum address you want the token sent to, and then yeah, we'll get in touch with you after that. Yes?
How could you see this integrating with events like Denver or conventions or festivals or things like that? Would there be a physical element to this? Could you see it integrating?
Would there be a physical element? Yes, actually. That's again, my co-creator has he's like the guy that imagines everything like before I do, and yeah, he mentioned basically we're gonna have like a release party where your affiliation with the exchange will literally have rooms where you can go and like hang out in those rooms. So that would be something kind of cool for that's a really cool idea actually. You could for conferences you could do the same, right? And basically have everyone kind of divvy up, and you could even when you're traveling you could even travel to the different rooms too. Although we do have a chat room because most people don't want to like walk around or anything, but that would be that's a good idea. Yeah, I think we envisioned like a release party with that.
So much, and we have more questions after for sure. So,
Cool.
Aaron, thank you.
By the way.
Thank you.
Hunter, we gotta get your mic off. Well, thank you again. Yeah, that was fantastic. I'm super excited to play this game. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And yeah, we'll have all the information and maybe a sign up on the laptop afterwards. So with that, I want to go ahead and bring up Andrew. Drew here. He is the founder of Archer Tax Group. And he's going to be talking to us about what businesses need to know about paying their employees and contractors in crypto. So definitely great guy for advice, super easy to talk to. Come see this guy afterwards. I'm sure he'd love to talk with everybody.
I only mostly bite.
Let me get you up here. Make sure this is, you're good to go.
And y'all will have to forgive me, I'm a PC user, not a Mac user. So, as Dan said, my name is Drew. I go by Andrew if I'm signing something, or if you're really angry with me, call me Andrew. I am the owner of Archer Tax Group. We've been in the crypto space for about 2 years now. We've been in taxes for about half a decade in a very weird pedigree of tax information. I used to do tax resolution, helping people get out of trouble, and then also some tax consulting with truck drivers, which is a very nuanced part of the tax code. So we've got this really weird perfect storm of not only do we know how to get you out of trouble if you didn't file any of your taxes in 2013 for cryptocurrency, we can also anticipate how things are going to kind of play out as the courts are deciding what actual tax law is as it relates to taxes. So one thing that we've gotten a lot of questions about very recently is, I've been an independent contractor. I've been working for this crypto project. They either paid me in native tokens, they paid me in Ethereum, they paid me in Bitcoin. And they say that I'm not an employee, but I feel like I'm an employee. What do I do? So one thing to keep in mind is in cryptocurrency, we've got multiple ways that you can get taxed on it. When you receive it, that is considered a taxable transaction, just as if you were paid in gold or fiat cash. There's a fair market value that you will receive it at. So if I receive Bitcoin at 8 a.m. on Friday, that's my timestamp of what that value is that I receive. I'll treat that as gross income to myself, take out my expenses, and then pay income tax, and then depending on my legal structure, either self-employment tax or potentially no other tax additionally there. You will have your basis in that crypto, whatever you recognize the fair market value as. So if I receive $100 worth of Bitcoin, but I have $101 of expense, technically I have a $1 loss in my business, but my basis in my cryptocurrency is $100. So if I sell it for $102 the next day, now I've also got a capital gain to match my business loss. And like I said before, the tax liability really depends on your status. Independent contractors, especially after the new tax law updates from 2018, have a lot of flexibility in the expenses, an additional qualified business income, which we'll get into a little bit more what that is, on top of being able to write off your cell phone bill, potentially health plans, things along those lines, as opposed to an employee that has their withholdings taken care of by the company. They'll have a portion withheld, and the company will also owe a portion as well. There we go. So when we look at whether or not you're an independent contractor, there's 3 major questions that you have to ask yourself. And there's about 20 different points that the IRS will look at, and it's kind of like the Howey test where even if you don't hit all of them, if you hit enough of them, you're technically an employee, not an independent contractor, just like you might be a security, even though you think that you're not because you've got one part of that. Behavioral control, so that's something along the lines of, if I tell you that you have to be in my office from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., 5 days a week, you're probably not an independent contractor. If I tell you how to go about the job, other than this is when I need the project delivered by, you're probably not an independent contractor. If I tell you, and this is a really great court case in it, FedEx a couple years ago lost a court case where they had a bunch of independent contractors that they said, you have to be in a FedEx marked truck, wearing your FedEx polo, saying you're from FedEx, and we're going to insure you as an individual. They tried to rule that as independent contractor, and they got slapped by the IRS saying these are all employees. And so they owed quite a bit of back taxes in employment taxes, plus penalties, and that was a huge hit for them. So if you are someone who's paying someone in tokens, make sure that you know that your people are actually contractors, not employees masquerading as contractors. The other idea really behind it is the financial control. If your economic well-being is tied wholly to one project and you're not allowed to seek out employment with other groups doing a similar function. So think about your plumber. If you have a plumber come in and fix your toilet, he can go out and do someone else's bathtub, do someone else's garden, things like that. He's not reliant wholly on you for his financial well-being, whereas an employee is wholly reliant on their employer to provide the work for them, and the employer has the ability to restrict what kind of work they actually do throughout the day. And the other thing, too, is a clear relationship. One thing that really got FedEx in a lot of trouble is they had a contract that read more like an employment contract, not like an independent contract. So if you can define those relationships clearly, more often than not, that'll actually help save a lot of heartache later on when dealing with the IRS and states as to regards of whether or not you have an independent contractor or an employee. So why does it matter? Honestly speaking, if you're an independent contractor, especially in this tax year specifically, you have a lot of more tools that will actually save you a significant amount of money. I actually had a client of mine that was an employee that has started to branch out into more of an independent contractor role because now he can write off his cell phone bill. He's had a home office that he's now able to write off. He's got a kid that he can now pay his kid as an employee of his company and then contribute to his kid's college fund and consider that a business deduction. There's a lot of expenses that you will pay throughout the day, your cell phone bill, even mileage on your car you can write off, and it ends up being quite a bit of money at the end of the year. The other issue is whether or not you're responsible for your taxes or your employer is responsible for your taxes. So as an independent contractor, you're required to remit your own income tax and self-employment tax, whereas as an employee, the company will hold it for everyone who's ever gotten a paycheck and sees all those lovely FICA and state and Medicare deductions. Your company takes care of that, and they're legally required to do that for you. And then also, if you want to ever be able to pull unemployment insurance, should you get fired, independent contractors don't get that luxury of being able to claim unemployment insurance because they're technically not employed by anyone. Like I said before, the expenses can pile up very quickly. I mean, if you think about a cell phone bill alone, if it's $200 a month, and you say 90% of that ends up to you, as a business expense, that's almost $2,400 a year. The other big thing, like I mentioned before, is the qualified business income. With that, you get to deduct off 20% of your gross profits, or basically your profits after expense, as a deduction. So if you made $100,000 in your tax year, and you have under, let me see here, $315,000 for anyone who's married filing jointly, or $207,500 for anyone who's a single filer, you get to write off $20,000 of expense that you didn't necessarily have to incur. And so with that, that sometimes puts people, depending on their income levels, in a much more beneficial tax situation because they're basically getting to shave a significant chunk of income off and not pay any tax on it at all. The other benefit, too, is the flexibility in tax structure. So the default for anyone who works for themselves as an independent contractor is sole proprietor. We do have some options to elect S-Corp status, and if you want to learn all about the nitty-gritty on that, come talk to me afterwards. There's a ton of tax savings we compile into an S-Corp that you normally wouldn't see in a sole proprietorship. And like I said, generally speaking, you will save on the taxes, and so will the entity that pays you. If your employer is paying you one rate, they have to pay an additional amount of employment tax, their portion of it, their half of, I think it's 7.65%, just like you have your withholding half. So it's usually in your company's best interest to pay you as an independent contractor as well, should they get the opportunity to. Like I mentioned, the kicker, if you're not paying attention to your income tax rate, if you're running solely as a sole proprietorship, you've got your marginal income tax rate, which can be anywhere up to, I believe, 39%, plus 15.3% for your portion of Social Security, Medicare, and so on. So there are some things that we have to kind of play around on that, and there's some numbers that we have to crunch. I wouldn't give blanket advice and say everyone should be an independent contractor. 95% of people should consider that if they've got the opportunity to. Employees have their half of employment taxes withheld along with their income tax, but they do not get the benefit anymore of claiming any kind of business deduction. So if you had a plan before where you were itemizing your business expenses, as of 2018, that's gone. So make sure you're getting reimbursed by your employer. So with 2018, they've reworked the tax code that most itemized deductions are gone, and that's part of them doubling the standard deduction. Employment expenses, so if you were deducting off mileage and you were a W-2 employee, in 2018 you no longer get to claim that as a deductible expense in your Schedule A. but most people weren't claiming that to begin with.
So as a contractor, what do they replace the write-offs with?
So asking what they replace the write-offs with. So as a contractor, you've always been able to write off your business expenses. That hasn't gone away, that hasn't changed at all. So if you have a mileage expense, as an employee, you're not going to be able to write that off. As a contractor, you're going to continue to write off the 53.5 cents per mile because that's in pursuit of business income, not employment income. All right, we've kind of gone over all that. We're running a little short on time, so I'll pick it up. The other thing, too, is your employers will be required to issue you a W-2 at the end of the year, not showing that you got paid in 10 Bitcoin over the course of the year, but whatever the US dollar equivalent would be, and you will owe taxes on that if you didn't liquidate that Bitcoin. Same thing with independent contractors. You are going to get a 1099 at the end of the year if you were paid more than $600. You'll subtract out your expenses, and that's what you'll owe your taxes on. So that being said, does anyone have any questions?
What if I get paid in Lightning? Is that still a taxable event, or does it have to hit the blockchain?
So when you say Lightning, is that a specific coin?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Okay, so Litecoin slash.
Lightning Network Bitcoin. Like it's an off-chain payment?
Okay. So the question is, if you get paid with an off-chain coin, what do you do in that case? So the open, honest answer is anything that you receive with property of tangible value, you need to be claiming whatever that tangible value is as income, subtract out your expenses, and then pay on it. Go ahead.
Did I receive the payment if it didn't change?
So if you have any kind of control over the coin, yes. What I will say is the IRS put out a notice about a month ago saying the 5 focus areas for fraud that they're going to really drill down on, and they call them virtual currencies, but that's cryptocurrencies. You can run, you can hide, but you can't escape the IRS's love. They're coming for full enforcement. Doesn't matter if it's on-chain, off-chain. If you're receiving any kind of economic value and US dollars hit your bank account, they're going to trace it back to you in some capacity. Yes?
If I understood at the beginning, you said that the amount of income that you're claiming is whatever you purchased it at the time that it goes on chain. So say I purchased Bitcoin for like 5,000 and now it's worth like half that, I'm still paying taxes on the 5,000, correct?
So are you talking about if you receive $5,000 worth of Bitcoin as a contractor and then later on you sell it for $2,500, what is the taxability of that?
Like one whole Bitcoin and don't cash that out.
So if you receive 1 Bitcoin, the time that you receive it, you recognize that as your gross income.
Right.
If it drops down, let's say it cuts down from 5,000 to 2,500, then all of a sudden, so you're going to have the business side of it, and it may or may not be taxable if you've got $5,000 worth of expenses. There's no additional expense, no additional tax to pay. If you receive that and there's no deductions, you're going to pay taxes if you had received $5,000, and then when you turn around and sell, you'll have a capital loss of $2,500.
How are multi-member LLCs treated with this these days?
So the question was, how are multi-member LLCs treated with it? Are you talking about receiving coins as payments or trading coins, things like that?
As payments.
So as payments, if you are a multi-member LLC and you're getting paid, this is no different than getting paid in fiat. So whatever the individual shareholder has, so if you've got 3 partners and it's all 1/3, you'll all recognize 1/3 of that income, just like you'd recognize 1/3 of the expenses. It doesn't necessarily matter what the entity type is. If it's a non-C Corp, everything is going to flow through to the individuals. Now, if you've got a partnership, that's going to be taxed different than an S Corp. So multi-member LLCs can be any number of things depending on what you elect with the IRS.
Guys, for the sake of time, we got to redirect to afterwards to talk more to Drew.
And if you guys want to talk, I'm here all night. So I want all of your craziest questions, and let's get creative with it.
It was a great talk, Drew. Thank you so much. Yeah, I know I'm going to be having lots of questions very shortly for you. So why don't we go ahead? The next person we're going to have is Paul Quigley. I'm pronouncing that correct, Paul? Quigley. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He is the CEO and founder of Block Lab and the managing director of Cornerstone Healthcare Consulting. So he's an active member of the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition and helps bring 5 landmark pieces of legislation into Wyoming. So this is some really exciting stuff in Wyoming legislature. As a matter of fact, and now we're working in Colorado. So the government's blockchain collaboration, or what is it? A council, right? It's coming online. So we can get you following on what Paul here is doing as well. So we'll go ahead and get him online. So. Yeah.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, good. So I'm going to spend just a few seconds really on Wyoming because we're really much more interested in what's happening with Colorado. And, okay, they keep telling me I have to swallow the microphone to be able to. Okay, so this feels very odd, but I'll try to stay with it. Okay, so at the end of the conversation, what I want you to do is I want you to understand that we need every one of you to be part of this, okay? This is not a push. This is a collaboration. So in Wyoming, in March, we were part of a group called the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition. I'm from Colorado, and in Colorado, live in Colorado. I went to Wyoming to support the initiative. That's how I became involved in this. I'm not a legislator, I'm not a lobbyist, I'm a business person, but it's one of those situations where you see this and you say you have to get involved to be able to move it forward. So we had success in Wyoming with 5 pieces of legislation, which I'll show in a second, and then we used the momentum of that in March to introduce several bills in the General Assembly in Colorado mid-session. We knew it was a risky proposition, but we thought we could use the momentum of the win in Wyoming to move the dial in Colorado and establish the similar structure. As you can see right here, what happened was in the last minutes of the General Assembly, we won and then we lost. So we won on a Senate vote, and the one vote overturned. So this is dense, but I believe the presentation is available. So what I want to point out to you is there are 5 pieces of legislation which were passed in Wyoming. What we're trying to do in Colorado now is take that and realize the business environment's a little different in Colorado. Tax structures are different, and we want to be able to take and modify this to make it very Colorado. Okay, so immediately after the bills failed, the governor initiated an executive order for the creation of a council for the advancement of blockchain technologies in Colorado. Okay, so that was the outcome. I actually, even though we lost the vote, I think we learned a lot in 9 weeks. Couple of things. The SEC still has not been clear about cryptocurrency, security tokens, or utility tokens. So that still remains, or securities. Actually, everything's a security. So Wyoming was important because it gave us a definition of a utility token as a piece of property. The work continues in Wyoming. There are several task force meetings where they're filling in kind of the nuances around this. By the way, these are all public meetings. You're welcome to attend those if you want. The next one's in September in Jackson Hole. So we're learning from each other. We're also working, learning across other states as well. So until the 2018 General Assembly, there was no legislation on the books for blockchain at all. There's now one piece of legislation, and that HB 18086 is a reference to the bill number. So you can go look that up. It's available on the state website. But basically, it has 3 parts. It was looking at encryption and using blockchain encryption for records in this state. It's very internally focused. The other 2 blockchain bills that were submitted, plus the money transmitter exemption bill, were defeated. So again, I think there was a lot of positive in this. It's sensitizing state agencies to blockchain and blockchain technologies. It's also sensitizing the universities. There's a very specific reference in this bill that was passed to notify the universities that they need to start paying attention to this and adding it to their curriculums. So that's important. It's not an immediate, but when you look at the curriculum process, it's not a quarter by quarter process. The takeaway, we learned a lot, as I said. The takeaway was the legislators supported this. There was bipartisan support in Colorado. However, they felt it was an overwhelming amount of information to be introduced to them mid-session. I couldn't agree with them more. So there's a lot of learning here, and there's a lot of opportunity, and this is where all of you come in, including me. We need to educate our elected officials. We're talking about fundamentals. We're talking about what is blockchain, what is a token, what is cryptocurrency. We need to do that because, as I said, there's been support. There's legislative support. In our conversations that we've had with legislators, they're very interested. Don't do this during a legislative session. Do it now. So find your representative, find your legislator, make a 20-minute appointment with them, and go over what you're doing in your business. Talk to them about it. Explain to them the business problem you're focused on and why it's relevant. So I wanted to just bring up the council. The governor signed an executive order for the Council for the Advancement of Blockchain. It met for the very first time a week ago Thursday. There are 15 of us. I was appointed to that council along with 14 of my other colleagues. And all of this is public. So I'm going to give you a reference in just a second. Please go out to the website and take a look at the information. Sure. Did I say Colorado? Yeah, Colorado.
That is Colorado.
Did I put Wyoming in there?
No, it doesn't.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. But again, very specific to Colorado, we need to help our we have to help our business community, the broader business community, not just the tech community, understand this. Okay, so I'm going to go right to the reference. The Blockchain Council, the public webpage is Choose Colorado Blockchain. This is what it looks like. And we had our first meeting on July 12th. The agenda is there and the minutes are there. These are public meetings, so I would encourage you to dial into the calls, to come to the meetings. And on the website are all the other meetings that are being scheduled. There'll be agendas that go out in advance, and there'll be meetings minutes afterwards. We're looking for comments. We're looking for input. We're looking for a lot of help. This can't be done with a group of 15 people for the whole state. Okay? So that's really what I wanted to get the message across to everyone. We'll continue to pull together and integrate our media channels. Right now we have several, and this came out of the work that we did before. You'll see a Telegram channel up there. That's still active. It's a broadcast-only channel. On the website, there are a couple of email addresses that you can send information if you want to be on the mailing list. We have this very wonderful woman, Jenna, who's an intern, who's working with us. I don't think she realized what she signed up for. But we're burying her with information. She's wonderful. Your active involvement is essential to make this work. And I have a slide for questions at the end of this. People have this presentation, right? Okay. So I have a couple of references in the back that you're welcome to take. And also I did include the core elements of a token versus a security, which is what the delineation was in Colorado. I mean, in Wyoming. Okay? Any questions? Sure.
So in the 9 weeks legislative process that you guys went through, there was some out-of-state parties that were trying to help push that through?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
There were some out-of-state parties that were helping with the legislation?
Yeah, so, you want to repeat the question? Go ahead.
Let me finish the question. Are they going to be involved in the council, or is this Colorado only now?
This is Colorado, and so the chair and the co-chair are. Is that your question? The legislative process, or?
My question is, I think part of the reason why it failed is because we had out-of-state interests pushing sort of their own agenda.
Well, okay, so your question is out-of-state interests?
Are they involved in the council? How's that?
Yeah, so let me dispel something, because I've heard this question asked a couple times. There were attorneys that were involved from a couple of firms that were being sponsored by Consensus and Filament, who have interests just like we all do in Colorado around getting legislation passed. So this out-of-state concern, I think, has been kind of taken out of context. No, one of the things that I've...
So I don't think it's out of context.
Okay.
I'm just asking if they were like...
Yeah, so what's happening is there are people, I know there are people from Wyoming who've been very supportive in helping us clarify what we think we want. We've been tapping people all over the country, asking them about where they are with their legislation as part of the work group. So there's going to be people from all over the country contributing to what we need to do for Colorado. One of the things that we're very aware of, and I don't know what the answer to this is yet, is that we're trying to harmonize whatever we do so that we become a location for innovation and not create difficulty with companies coming in, meaning we create a separate environment that's unique to Colorado, that's so unique that people don't know how to engage it. And we don't want people to originate in Colorado having a hard time going out to other states. So there's part of the work group's job actually is to keep current all legislation, both at federal and state level. I'm not sure I answered your question, though. Are there any other questions? I can answer you afterwards.
Yeah, my question is, how close do you think we are to having some solid guidance from the SEC on how they're going to interpret coins and what they're going to consider securities and what they're not going to consider securities?
That's a really, yeah.
Are we anywhere close to them?
Yeah.
Some type of guidance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, but I don't know I don't even know how to answer that one, actually. We're really in the beginning stages of putting legislation together that will actually work to give the entrepreneurs a clear framework in which to work. So you're downstream from that, which is an if and an if and an if. So, sure.
How does it work if, like, Colorado or Wyoming says, you know, XYZ tokens are utility tokens, they're not considered security, but then the SEC comes in and says everything is a security except for Bitcoin, Ether?
Yeah, so one of the things that happened and one of the reasons why the Wyoming legislation, and again, I'm not an attorney, so I just want to put that out there. One of the reasons why the legislation for Wyoming has been referenced many times is because it stayed so clear of the definition of securities by even the most wide interpretation. It's really stayed around services and goods, and it's been very clear around delineation of tokens as property. Utility tokens equal property. So it's really, I think there's a recognition that there's a lot of opinion, but there's a lot of recognition that the Securities and Exchange Commission is going to have to define that line. But we can operate. See, right now the problem is we've been frozen, right? You can't operate. And that's why you're seeing this exodus of companies, very viable companies leaving the U.S. to incorporate and run their businesses.
So you're still betting then that the SEC is not...
It's not a bet.
Well, but so again, like the SEC comes in and says everything is security, and you have these companies running in Colorado, Wyoming that are using what they consider a utility token, and now the SEC says it's security. Do we have like a marijuana, type event where on the federal level it's illegal, but on the state level it's legal?
Yeah, I understand your question. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but any other questions?
I'll take them after.
All right, I'll be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. That was really fantastic. I know I especially would very much like to talk to you afterwards how I can become more involved, because this is really important stuff. So thanks again. Next, we're going to have Jason Rolfling, who's going to be talking to us about his fantastic project, RenCoin. So let me pull up his presentation. So to give you a little heads up on who Jason is, he's the founder of the Rencoin project. He's a proud father of 3. And his background includes business development and sales within technology startups and Fortune 500 companies. And the tagline for this guy is the Rencoin project in decentralized micro certification. So with that, take it away, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Well, thanks. That's a little abrupt. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for having me out, and excited to talk to you a little bit about what I'm working on, which is the Rencoin project. We'll go into some of those details, and then also to talk in kind of a broader sense about micro-credentials and how it can be used in a decentralized way. So with that, I'll get started. All right, so to give a little background, what is Ren? Ren's a cryptocurrency for children earned through learning to give real-world value to their educational efforts. And then to talk about what are micro-credentials. I'm sure you've all heard of credentials, but micro-credentials are really specific skills or competencies that have been achieved in a meaningful and high-quality manner as endorsed by the issuing institution. There's no official definition of micro-credentials, so that's just a bunch of words that I've pulled together. But the idea of micro-credentials is it is something that certifies you know something and has been issued by some broader authority that has the qualifications to give you that credential, but it's not, a full degree. And there's a lot of reasons that micro-credentials could be really important as we move forward and kind of change how we're educating and going through university and things like that. So taking it back a little bit to why I'm here today, I have 3 kids, and so I got really interested in children and education in my journey. And as I started down this idea of cryptocurrency and tokenization, I started wondering, why are children not very engaged in school? And I saw that through my own children. And so I started doing some of the research, and I found that like 40% of high school students are not engaged in school. And that's also true in middle school and a little bit lesser extent, but still fairly significant in first through 6th grade. And then more shocking that there's even less children that feel prepared for life after school. So whether that be going to college or getting a job. And so I started wondering why that was and where that's kind of taking us. So that's where kind of my project was born from. And the idea was that children put in all this time and energy into learning for decades, and what do they come out of school with if they don't feel prepared to enter life? And so that was really kind of one of the founding principles of how I got here today. So the Rencoin project, it's an educational incentive platform for children, and it really boils down to kind of a few things that we do. So the first step is that children just learn like they do today, whether it be in school, whether it be through online learning, through a number of different things. So maybe it's just attending school, which is shockingly a major problem that schools have, is just getting kids to attend school. There's a lot of new hardware out there, the STEM type hardware, that you can learn to code by programming a robot and going through different steps, or through e-learning, online learning. And so they learn the way that they do today. And then kind of what we're looking to do from there is add these micro-credentials or tokens or badges on top of that. So when kids learn, and we're focusing on kids initially, but it's really any type of learning. So when you learn, you get a micro-credential for spending the time and effort on that learning. And then we can start organizing those micro-credentials by different categories of learning: literacy, mathematics, science, and that's important for a number of ways. And so just to kind of step back here, we're focused on the effort of learning, not the outcome of learning. So I really like this, who's going to win climbing the tree? And I have a feeling it's not the elephant or the fish. But our school systems and a lot of our education is based on outcome and not effort. But the outcome is a result of the effort. So our project's really about putting the effort in and recognizing that the effort is valuable. So really the third step in the process is now we have these micro certifications, micro credentials, and we want to put some value to them. So talking to a lot of folks, in different walks of life, people don't understand the value to education. And so if we can start putting a value to education, I mean, we're putting forward time to learn things, and if that can be shown as valuable, I hope that that will help keep kids more engaged in school. So for me, it's a digital piggy bank for children, kind of in the modern world. But because we're talking about children, it does need to be managed by parents, so there's some things that we'll be doing there. And then finally, because we're talking about a cryptocurrency, there's got to be an ecosystem. So the question becomes kind of who invests in education? And the answer is we all invest in education. It's through our tax dollars. Corporations, they want to hire skilled labor, skilled talent. Our public school system, they all want to see our kids succeed and become contributing members of society. And so this is kind of the ecosystem behind what we've planned for the RenCoin project. So as I said, it starts with kids learning, and then these micro-credentials get recorded, and then we take those micro-credentials and we give them value through adding RenCoin to them. And then it's just a cryptocurrency, freely exchanged, bought, sold. And then kind of the sauce is because we have never-ending inflation, because we're giving this currency to kids for learning, which we can't put a limit or a cap on that. So we have to have some way to control that inflation. So the way we look to do that is we look to have people invest in that cryptocurrency by essentially removing it from the economy. And that's when governments and corporations and others come into play to invest in specific categories of learning. And those categories of learning then will influence what topics kids want to invest their time in as they grow and learn, right? So it gives a market feedback mechanism for learning and where we spend our time. So with that, just a few things that our focus of our project. So we believe that education is valuable. We do want to see equity in learning, because the education market's really, really interesting. If you're a for-profit company, you can be pretty successful, but what you're doing is you're investing most of the education into students that they don't really need it. I mean, these are all fairly well educated. Their parents can pay for those types of things, but and the money's not going to the students that really need it, that don't have access to some of those resources. And then the nonprofits, they can only do community level stuff. They can't do these big technologies which can have major impacts on kids. So by creating an economy of learning, we hope to reach kind of everybody on the spectrum. And then, I think skills are changing, and they're getting a lot more specific and tailored to specific needs. And right now, education as an institution can't really keep up with the world of preparing kids for the future. So trying to find some sort of feedback loop that takes those skills in demand and calibrates them to the education system. So I like the saying, automation, outsourcing, and new contract arrangements are changing the nature of work. Everyone must think and act differently about how to train and sustain the nation's talent supply. So this is the way I'm approaching that problem. Thanks for having me. If you guys have any questions.
What applications do you see in professional training environments?
The question was, what applications do I see in professional training environments? And I think the answer there is there's probably even more in professional training environments than even with kids of a younger age. Micro-credentials is actually becoming a pretty hot topic in a lot of different areas, because in the education sector, they think that it can make some pretty big impacts. And even here in Colorado, the government right now is actually actively looking at micro-credentials and how they can use micro-credentials to get rid of the degree certification. So they're trying to go throughout the government and say you can't require a bachelor's degree or a degree, and you can look at these other ways to learn, because there's value in some of these other ways to learn, but it's really hard to figure that out, because when employers go to hire, they put a degree required and they filter out about 80% of applicants as a first screening because they just don't have the time to go through all the resumes. So we need some way to match skills to jobs that isn't just degree, and it needs to be efficient.
Briefly, is Rencoin then convertible to other currencies somehow?
The question is Rencoin convertible to other currencies? And the answer would be that wouldn't be of our doing, but there's going to be centralized, and as we heard, hopefully decentralized, relay systems that would allow that conversion to happen. But it's not something that we would do. Yeah, in the back.
Can you maybe repeat or go into a little more detail of how you plan to solve the market cap of the inflation issue?
Yeah, so the question is how to solve the inflation issue. And this project's fairly early on from a conceptual standpoint of how that long-term economy builds, but we have a little bit of a plan to that, and that's really just calibrating the market to kind of the investment. So kids put in time, and then there's this level factor. So at different ages, there's different values because motivation, needs more funds as kids get older. And then there's this category factor. So the idea is, as we have categories, we have companies that want to be on a leaderboard. So let's say, Google needs specific types of programming with these types of attributes. They invest in those types of attributes. So the next workforce, the next generation has those skills, and then those people also go to Google because they see that they're on the top of the list for folks that are investing in their education category. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, with that, let's thank Jason one more time. And really all of our speakers here tonight. It has been fantastic. I don't know about you guys, but having so many different varied topics has been fun. So I encourage everybody, stick around. We got some snacks and drinks in the back. We'll have a laptop up front. If you're interested in getting more involved, the coloradoblockchain.com website's sitting up there. And we'd love to get you on our Slack channel. We can get you registered to check out any of our live streams, which we're doing tonight, if you want to recap anything. And get your contact info so we can get all these slides to you if you'd like them. And there's also a bunch of other meetups who are listed there on that website. We have something going on almost every night. I know the next one's going to be Thursday that I run out in Worldwide Tech. I'd love to have you there. And like I say, there's a lot. More varied topics and a lot of chances to get more connected to this community. And with that, I think I saw one more question?
Yeah, is this the new venue going forward for lightning talks?
I think at least notionally, yes. Grid, I think at least for now, is on pause. So ESQ is going to be the new spot next month, potentially, but keep in mind to check the meetup site for where things are. Because there's other meetups that have had people show up like, wait, this is the usual place, but we changed it everywhere, we promise. So just check before you go. Cool. With that, thanks, guys.